जय श्री राधानील माधव की जय। नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामी इति नामिने। नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। कि बजयो जय गौरचंदेर आरती कशोभा जानवी तटवने जगामन लोभा। कि बजयो जय गौरचंदेर आरती कशोभा जानवी तटवने जगमन लोभा। कि बदाखिने निताय चान बामे गदाधार निकटे अद्वैता श्रीनी वासा चत्रधारा। कि बदाखिने निताय चान बामे गदाधार निकटे अद्वैत श्रीनी वसचत्रधार। कि बबोसी आचे गौरचान रत्न सिंहासने आरती कोरेना ब्रह्मा आदि देवगाने। कि बबोसी आचे गौरचान रत्न सिंहासने आरती कोरेना ब्रह्मा आदि देवगाने। कि बनरा हरि आदि कोरी चामर धुलाया संजय मुकुंद बासु घोषा आदि गाया। कि बनरा हरि आदि कोरी चामर धुलाया संजय मुकुंद बासु घोषा आदि गाया। शंख बाजे घंटा बाजे, बाजे करताला। 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 मधुरा मृदंगा बाजे परमरसाला। मधुरा मृदंगा बाजे परमरसाला। शंख बाजे घंटा बाजे, माधुर 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 बाजे। शंख बाजे घंटा बाजे, माधुर 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 बाजे। शंख बाजे घंटा बाजे, माधुर 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 बाजे। माधुर 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 बाजे, माधुर 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 बाजे। गौरांगे रतिक शोभा, जग जान माना लोभा। गौरांगे रतिक शोभा, जग जान माना लोभा। गौरांगे रतिक शोभा, जग जान माना लोभा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohana Gopal Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohana Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Sita Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunada Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunada Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunada Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunada Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare कि बहू कोटि चंद्रजिनी वदन उज्ज्वल गाल देशे बनमाला कोरे झलमाला कि बहू कोटि चंद्रजिनी वदन उज्ज्वल गला देशे बनमाला कोरे झलमाला इब शिवा सुख नारदा प्रेमे गदगदा भक्ति विनोदा देखे गोरार संपादा किब शिवा सुख नारदा प्रेमे गदगदा भक्ति विनोदा देखे गोरार संपादा कि बजयो जय गौरा चंदे आरती कसोभा जानवी तटवने जगा मन लोभा कि बजयो जय गौरा चंदे आरती कसोभा जानवी तटवने जगा मन लोभा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadra Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadra Jayo Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Sri Radhe Jayo Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Sri Radhe Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha 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 Jayo Bhakta Prala Jayo Bhakta Prala Jayo Bhakta Prala Jayo Bhakta Prala Jayo Sita Ram Jayo Lakshmana Hanuman Jayo Sita Ram Jayo Lakshmana Hanuman Jayo Sita Ram Jayo Lakshmana Hanuman Jayo Sita Ram Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parvajigacharya Ashta Sata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parvajigacharya Ashta Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय नवद्वीप धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय यमुना माई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय बृहद मृदंगा की जय सामेत भक्त वृंद की जय गौर प्रेमानंदे all glories to Hari assembled devotees all glories to assembled devotees all glories Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai Namaste Narasimhaya Namaste Narasimhaya Praladala Dadayini Hiranyakasi Purvakshaha Silatanka Nakhalaye Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha Yeto Yeto Yami Tato Narsimha Bahe Narsimha Hrudaye Narsimha Narasimhamadim Saranam Prapadye Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Singam Dalita Hiranyakasipu Tanubringam केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे तव कर कमलवरे नखाम अद्भुत सिंगम दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गं केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा श्री भक्ति विघ्न विनाश कसी लक्ष्मी नरसिंह भक्त प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। Today is Makara Sankranti. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Today is Makara Sankranti, and it's supposed to be a very auspicious day. Why? Because this is the day that the sun goes from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, and days become lighter and the weather becomes warmer, and today is one of the best days to perform the Shraddha ceremony, also for one's ancestors, and also because it's the day that Bhisma Pitamaha waited for in order to leave his body. There's a lot of reasons why Makara Sankranti is important, but traditionally it's important, and it's explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 18, verse number 145. It says, "It is now the beginning of the month of Magha. If we go to Prayaga at this time, we shall have an opportunity to bathe for a few days during the Makara Sankranti." So, this is the Sanadiya Brahmana speaking to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, bathing during the month of Magha at the Magha Mela still takes place. This is a very old Mela or assembly, dating from time immemorial. It is said that ever since the Lord, in the form of Mohini Murti, took a bucket of nectar and kept it at Prayaga, holy men have gathered there every year and observed the Magha Mela. Every 12th year there is a Kumbh Mela, a great festival, and all the holy men from all over India assemble there. The Brahmana, meaning the Sanadiya Brahmana, wanted to take advantage of the Magha Mela and bathe there. Bathing at the confluence of the Ganges and Yamuna near the fort at Allahabad, Prayaga, is mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Maghe Masi Gamisyanti Ganga Yamuna Sangamam Gavam Sata Sahasrasya Samyak Datam Chayat Phalam Prayage Mase Vai Chai Aham Snatasya Tat Phalam. If one goes to Prayaga and bathes at the confluence of the Ganges and Yamuna in the month of Magha, he attains the result of giving hundreds and thousands of cows in charity. Simply by bathing for 3 days there, he attains the results of such a pious activity. Quote, that's the translation of the verse. Because of this, the Sanadiya Brahmana was very eager to go to Prayaga and bathe. Generally, karmis, or fruitive laborers, take advantage of bathing there during the month of Magha. It's basically December, January, thinking that they will be rewarded in the future.
those who are situated in devotional service do not very strictly follow the karma kandya process. And then in the Madhya Lila again, chapter 19, verse number okay, one second. I have to find this. One second. There's a little bit more information in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, Makara Sankranti, one second. Makara Sankranti. 218-150. Okay, so 218. 150. So, I'm sorry. Again, the Sanadira Brahmana says, I will be very happy if we all leave and take the path by the banks of the Ganges. Then we can have the opportunity of bathing in the Ganges at Prayaga during Makara Sankranti. And then Prabhupada writes, there are two great occasions for bathing in the Ganges during Magha Mela. One is on the day of the dark moon, and the other is on the day of the full moon during the month of Magha. Okay, so that is what we would call the Karma Kandiya understanding of this Makara Sankranti. Thousands and thousands, sometimes millions of people go to the confluence of where the Ganges, the Yamuna, and previously the Saraswati rivers came together. The Saraswati River, of course, has disappeared now. So, therefore, it's just the Ganges and the Yamuna. And because people think that they will get a drop of, their body might be touched by one drop of Amrita, or this transcendental nectar of immortality. Of course, Mohini Murti took that pot of nectar of immortality and from the demons who had stolen it, and as Prabhupada said here, that she hid it in Prayag, which today is called, or was previously was called Prayag, the place of confluence of the three rivers. Today it's called Allahabad, but the real name is Prayag. And one receives tremendous benediction, material benediction, if they can touch a drop of that nectar. Okay, so anyway, the real reason why we celebrate Makara Sankranti is because it was a day that Bhisma Pitamaha waited to leave his body. When he, of course, on the 10th day of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he was mortally wounded, but because he was a Mahayogi, he didn't die. And he waited patiently for the battle to be over, and then after the battle, all the funeral ceremonies to be over. And at that point, he was coming close to Makara Sankranti. All the Pandavas and many other great sages came together to see the auspicious leaving of Bhismadev, leaving his body. And before he left his body, he spoke on the subject of what we call Raja Dharma. He was able to convince Yudhishthira Maharaj to do something that Krishna was not able to convince him of, or at least it appeared like that. Krishna actually could have convinced him, but he wanted his devotee, Bhismadev, to be glorified forever because he was a pure devotee of the Lord. And therefore, Bhismadev spoke the transcendental knowledge of Raja Dharma, how the management of a kingdom by an ideal king like Maharaj Yudhisthira. In fact, the whole battle of Kurukshetra was fought in order to establish Yudhisthira Maharaj as the king. Krishna wanted good government, and you need a Raja Rishi, a saintly king like Yudhisthira, to manage the country and the people and lead them on the path of Sanatana Dharma, or eternal, attaining liberation from the cycle of birth and death, and also organizing the Varnashram Dharma system and having it managed correctly so that everyone makes progress and everyone has a chance to be Krishna conscious. So then besides that, Bhismadev also taught Maharaj Yudhisthira the Sahasra Nama mantras, the 1008 names of Lord Vishnu, and that's still being recited today. So many auspicious things happened at the side of Bhisma as he was leaving his body and speaking transcendental knowledge, and above all, explaining to Maharaj Yudhisthira who Krishna actually is. So, therefore, this is the real reason why Vaishnavas celebrate Makara Sankranti. And I'm going to read a few things from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, The Passing Away of Bhisma. Bhisma, of course, was on the opposite side of the battlefield in Kurukshetra, and that was by some arrangements that had been made by Duryodhana, but that did not diminish Bhismadev's pure, let's say, love and understanding of Krishna, and he knew that the Pandavas were going to win the war, but he acted out of duty because he was the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, and he was obliged to protect them. So, of course, the Pandavas are in the Kuru dynasty also, but they were cheated by Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, and you know this story. But now let's hear what Bhismadev says. He says, first of all, the sons of Maharaj Pandu, meaning the Pandavas, were sitting silently nearby Bhismadev, and Bhismadev's body was pierced by hundreds of arrows, and he was basically on a bed of arrows, right? His body had been pierced, and he was still stuck to the ground by all those arrows, many of which were shot by Arjuna. And it says, the sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhismadeva congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. And the purport Prabhupada says, when Maharaj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up under the affection of elderly members of the royal family, specifically under Bhismadeva. Later on, when the Pandavas were grown up, they were cheated by cunning Duryodhana and company. And Bhismadeva, although he knew that the Pandavas were innocent and were unnecessarily put into trouble, could not take the side of the Pandavas for political reasons. At the last stage of his life, when Bhismadeva saw his most exalted grandsons, headed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, sitting very gently at his side, the great warrior grandfather could not check his loving tears, which were automatically flowing from his eyes. He remembered the great tribulations suffered by his most pious grandsons. Certainly he was the most satisfied man because of Yudhisthira's being enthroned in place of Duryodhana, and thus he began to congratulate them. Next verse. Bhismadeva said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj Yudhisthira was disturbed due to the great massacre in the Battle of Kurukshetra. Bhismadeva could understand this, and therefore he spoke first of the terrible sufferings of Maharaj Yudhisthira. He was put into difficulty by injustice only, and the Battle of Kurukshetra was fought just to counteract this injustice. Therefore, he should not regret the great massacre. He wanted to point out particularly that they were always protected by the Brahmanas, the Lord, and religious principles. As long as they were protected by these three important items, there was no cause of disappointment. Thus, Bhismadeva encouraged Maharaj Yudhisthira to dissipate his despondency. As long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and strictly following religious principles, one has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. Bhismadeva, as one of the authorities in the line, wanted to impress this point upon the Pandavas. Next verse. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. Purport. The sufferings of Kunti Devi are doubly lamented. She suffered greatly because of early widowhood and to get her minor children brought up in the royal family. And when her children were grown up, she continued to suffer because of her son's actions. So her sufferings continued. This means that she was destined to suffer by providence. Providence means, of course, ultimately it means Krishna. And also the laws of material nature and so forth. And this one this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. So, and this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. In other words, certain things are destined to happen. That's called by providence. And therefore, one has to learn to tolerate without being disturbed. Matra sparsastu konteya sitosnastu gadukadaha agama painod Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 13th verse. Tamstatiksha bharata. So it says, Matra sparsastu konteya sitosnastu gadukadaha. Sukha-dukkha-daha. It means that just like happiness and distress come and go, just like the seasons of summer and winter come and go, one has to learn to tolerate them and not be disturbed by them because they don't last forever. And it says here, verse number 14, O son of Kunti, Agama Paino Nityas Tamstatiksha Bharata. The non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O son of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So this is the culture of a devotee. And just like here it says that this means that she was destined to suffer by providence. And this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. So devotees remain unperturbed even though there can be tremendous calamities happening to them. They accept this as the mercy of the Lord because when things are going good, they thank the Lord for his mercy. And when things are going bad, they again thank the Lord for his mercy. They see everything as the mercy of the Lord. They do not begrudge the Lord because they may be in difficult situation or suffering. So this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita also. Advaita Sarvabhutanam Maitra Karana Evacha Nirmamo Nirhankara Sasantim Adhigachat Samaduka Sukha Shami Santusto Satatam Yogi Yatatma Drita Nishchaya Mayarpitamano Buddhir Yomad Bhakta Samepriya. So this is a very important verse, 12th chapter, 13th, 14th verse. It says, one who is not envious but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. So Prabhupada explains in a purport, coming again to the point of pure devotional service, the Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these two verses. A pure devotee is never disturbed in any circumstances, nor is he envious of anyone, nor does a devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds. So, it is better to suffer than to protest. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8, Tate nukampam susamik samana punjan evatma kritam vipakam. Whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. He thinks, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I am suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I am not getting all the punishment I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see what is the actual mentality of a devotee. And it's completely opposite to that of materialistic people. Also in the first canto, 17th chapter, verse number 18. There's very further information about this, where it says, O greatest among human beings, it is very difficult to ascertain the particular miscreant who has caused our sufferings, because we are bewildered by all the different opinions of theoretical philosophers. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, there are many theoretical philosophers in the world who put forward their own theories of cause and effect, especially about the cause of suffering and its effect on different living beings. Generally, there are 6 great philosophers: Kanada, the author of Vaisheshika philosophy; Gautama, the author of logic or Nyaya; Patanjali, the author of mystic yoga; Gautama, the author of logic. Kapila, the author of Sankhya philosophy; Jaimini, the author of Karma Mimamsa; and Vyasadeva, the author of Vedanta Darshan. Although the bull, or the personality of religion, and the cow, the personality of the earth, knew perfectly well that the personality of Kali was the direct cause of their sufferings, still, as devotees of the Lord, they knew well also that without the sanction of the Lord, no one could inflict trouble upon them. According to the Padma Purana, our present trouble is due to the fructifying of seedling sins, but even those seedling sins also gradually fade away by execution of pure devotional service. Thus, even if the devotees see the mischief mongers, they do not accuse them for sufferings inflicted. They take it for granted that the mischief monger is made to act by some indirect cause, and therefore they tolerate the sufferings, thinking them to be God-given in small doses, for otherwise the sufferings should have been greater. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to get a statement of accusation against the direct mischief monger, but they, meaning the bull and the cow, declined to give it on the above-mentioned grounds. Speculative philosophers, however, do not recognize the sanction of the Lord. They try to find out the cause of sufferings in their own way, as will be described in the following verses. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, such speculators are themselves bewildered, and thus they cannot know that the ultimate cause of all causes is the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. Now, a perfect example of this is Aristotle. He, 2,500 years ago, explained 4 kinds of causes of actions or reactions. But he never mentioned Krishna. So that's the problem. They don't really know what is the real truth. So they make up theories that sound great and seem to be true, but actually they miss the point. What is the point? That Krishna is the origin of everything. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam, which means he is the cause of all causes. Nothing can happen without the will of the Lord. Not even a blade of grass can move without the will of the Lord. Therefore, the bull and the cow, who were being beaten and were suffering because of Kali, refused to accuse Kali because they knew that Kali would not be able to do anything unless the Lord permitted it. And therefore, knowing that the Lord is the ultimate cause of everything, they did not begrudge the Lord, and they did not accuse Kali. They just waited patiently, as it says, as Prabhupada says, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I'm suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I'm not getting all the punishment that I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada says, therefore, the devotee is always calm, quiet, and patient despite many distressful conditions. A devotee is always kind to everyone, even to his enemy. Nirmama means that a devotee does not attach much importance to the pains and trouble pertaining to the body because he knows perfectly well that he is not the material body. He does not identify with the body. Therefore, he is freed from the conception of false ego and is equipoised in happiness and distress. He is tolerant and he is satisfied with whatever comes by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He does not endeavor much to achieve something with great difficulty. Therefore, he is always joyful. He is a completely perfect mystic because he is fixed in the instructions received from the Supreme Master, from the spiritual master, and because his senses are controlled, he is determined. He is not swayed by false arguments because no one can lead him from the fixed determination of devotional service. He is fully conscious that Krishna is the eternal Lord, so no one can disturb him. All these qualifications enable him to fix his mind and intelligence entirely on the Supreme Lord. Such a standard of devotional service is undoubtedly very rare, but a devotee becomes situated in that stage by following the regulative principles of devotional service. Furthermore, the Lord says that such a devotee is very dear to him, for the Lord is always pleased with all his activities in full consciousness. So this is a description of Bhismadev also, as well as Yudhisthira Maharaj, as well as Parikshit Maharaj, and other great devotees. So, then Bhisma Pitamaha says, in my opinion, this, meaning everything that's happened to the Pandavas and Kunti Devi, is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. So he's going to attribute this to Kala. Kala is time. But Kala, or time, is an energy of Krishna, and it's under his control. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains, there is control by time all over the space within the universe, as there is control by time all over the planets. All the big gigantic planets, including the sun, are being controlled by the force of air, as the clouds are carried by the force of air. Similarly, the inevitable Kala, or time, controls even the action of the air and other elements. Everything, therefore, is controlled by the supreme Kala, or time, a forceful representative of the Lord within the material world. Thus, Yudhisthira should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Everyone has to bear the actions and reactions of time as long as one is within the conditions of the material world. Yudhisthira should not think that he had committed sins in the previous birth and is suffering the consequence. Even the most pious has to suffer the condition of material nature. But a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide Brahmana and Vaishnavas following the religious principles. These three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmaji, is also under the control of that time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. Okay, so Bhismadeva's point was that in spite of all their troubles and travails, the Pandavas were protected by Brahmanas, God, and the principles of religion. So then Bhismadev says, "Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhisthira, the son of the demigod controlling religion," meaning Yamaraj. Bhima, the great fighter, in other words, Yudhisthira is the son of Yamaraj, or also called Dharmaraj, the demigod controlling religion. Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Gandiva, and above all the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. So it says here that Yudhisthira is protected by all these things. Still time has exerted its influence over him and his brothers. And the Prabhupada explains in the purport, as far as the material or spiritual resources are required, there was no scarcity in the case of the Pandavas. Materially, they were well equipped because two great warriors, namely Bhima and Arjuna, were there. Spiritually, the king himself was the symbol of religion, and above all of them, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, was personally concerned with their affairs as the well-wisher. And yet, there were so many reverses on the side of the Pandavas. Despite the power of pious acts, the power of personalities, the power of expert management, and the power of weapons under the direct supervision of Lord Krishna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses, which can only be explained as due to the influence of Kala, inevitable time. Kala is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of Kala indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human being. So, obviously, Krishna has orchestrated this whole situation. Why? Because he wants Yudhisthira to be established as a saintly king of the whole world, the whole material, the whole world meaning the whole planet Earth. And he wants him to be glorified. But he and his brothers were put through many hellish situations to get there. But they were always protected by the mercy of the Lord. So the next verse, 16, says, "O king," so Bhismadeva is continuing to speak to Yudhisthira, "no one can know the plan of the Lord, Shri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered." And in purport, Prabhupada explains, the bewilderment of Maharaj Yudhisthira over his past sinful acts and the resultant sufferings, etc., is completely negated by the great authority Bhisma, one of the 12 authorized persons, or Mahajans. Bhisma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhisthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. The sufferings of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Virtue means what? Acting always under the order of Krishna. It's the highest virtue, is to be subordinate to the Lord and always carry out his orders without any material attachments. And therefore the whole battle of Kurukshetra was to show that virtue always triumphs over vice or evil. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhismadeva was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhisthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. Even a great fighter like Bhisma could not win the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhismadeva was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhisma cannot win on the wrong side. So Bhisma was basically invincible. He's the son of his mother was Ganga, so it means he's a demigod. Even though his father was Santanu, a great king of the earth, his mother was Mother Ganges. So he was, up until the age of 16, he was brought up on the Deva Lokas, and he had all the qualities of a exalted Deva. Therefore, he was invincible. He was not an ordinary human being. But even he could not defeat the Pandavas because it was by the will of the Lord, because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhisma cannot win on the wrong side. Now, that's a very important statement. Why? Well, because every one of us has to choose who we're going to follow. And if we choose someone who is not actually following Krishna, then we are destined to lose. Because this battle of Kurukshetra showed that even a invincible fighter like Bhisma cannot win on the wrong side, no matter how great of a warrior he is. Okay, so we should always choose the right side in all circumstances. And what is the right side? The right side is Lord Chaitanya's Harinam Sankirtan party, chanting, dancing, and feasting, and glorifying the Lord. That's the right side. That's the side we should be on always. So the next verse says, O best among the descendants of Bharata, Yudhisthira, I maintain, therefore, that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Okay, now he's talking again about the plan of the Lord. First of all, he says that even the greatest personalities in the universe are not able to understand the plan of the Lord. But Bhisma Dev is saying now that what happened to you Pandavas was within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. So here, Bhisma is making a very powerful argument why Yudhisthira Maharaj should take the position of the king of the whole world and protect the innocent citizens by being a good administrative leader. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The popular saying is that a housewife teaches the daughter-in-law by teaching the daughter. Similarly, the Lord teaches the world by teaching the devotee. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord, because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Whenever, therefore, a show is made to teach the devotee, as in the case of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, it is for teaching the less intelligent men. A devotee's duty, therefore, is to ungrudgingly accept tribulations from the Lord as a benediction. The Pandavas were advised by Bhismadeva to accept the responsibility of administration without hesitation. The poor subjects were without protection due to the battle of Kurukshetra, and they were awaiting the assumption of power by Maharaj Yudhisthira. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there's no mundane difference between the two. So the Lord wants Yudhisthira to become the king. In fact, the whole battle of Kurukshetra was fought for that reason. So now Bhisma makes his most significant statement. He says, and now he's going to instruct Yudhisthira to understand who this Krishna is exactly. He says, this Sri Krishna, who is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead, he is the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. So basically, Bhisma Pitama is saying that, look, Krishna's standing right next to you. Don't think he's some relative of yours. He's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead acting in this very, very, let's say, humble role as a relative, an advisor, and well-wisher. But he is actually the first Narayana. He is actually the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. And he's the supreme enjoyer. So this is a very significant statement by Bhismadev. In the purport, Prabhupada says, the Vedic system of acquiring knowledge is the deductive process. Okay, what is a deductive process? You begin with the self-evident a priori statements of the Vedas, and you deduct, just like as an example of deductive reasoning is, all men are mortal. That's a fact. No one can argue that. John is a man, therefore John is immortal. John is a man, therefore John is going to die. He's mortal. So that's called deductive reasoning. You begin with something, a general statement that is irrevocable, that is absolutely true, and then you deduct things from it. Okay, so the Vedic knowledge is received perfectly by disciplic succession from authorities. Such knowledge is never dogmatic, as ill-conceived by less intelligent persons. The mother is the authority to verify the identity of the father. She is the authority for such confidential knowledge. Therefore, authority is not dogmatic. In the Bhagavad Gita, this truth is confirmed in the fourth chapter, verse number 2. And the perfect system of learning is to receive it from authority. So, authority is not dogmatic. Okay, what does that mean? Well, dogmatic means that you're forced to accept it, you can't question it, and you have no choice. Well, that's dogmatic. But actually, Bhagavad Gita says that, it says, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasaya vidu sakalinahan mahata yoganasta parantapa. This supreme science, meaning Bhagavad Gita, was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in the course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it appears to be lost. So, Prabhupada says that it is clearly stated that the Gita is especially meant for the saintly kings because they were to execute its purpose in ruling over the citizens. Certainly, Bhagavad Gita was never meant for the demonic persons who would dissipate its value for no one's benefit and would devise all types of interpretations according to personal whims. As soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of the unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to reestablish the disciplic succession. 5,000 years ago, it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciplic succession was broken, and therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment, also there are so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to the authorized disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Sri Krishna. This spirit is demonic, because demons do not believe in God, but simply enjoy the property of the Supreme. Since there is great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara disciplic succession system, and an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great war, Bhagavad Gita, accepted as it is a great boon to humanity, but if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculations, it is simply a waste of time. So, therefore, the point here Prabhupada makes is that in Bhagavad Gita, this truth is confirmed in the 4th chapter, 2nd verse. That is, that the authority for the confidential knowledge of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna himself. It's spoken by him. He is the original teacher of Lord Brahma, the first created being in the universe. So, and Prabhupada says, and the perfect system of learning is to receive it from authority. And Krishna is the original authority. So when you hear Bhagavad Gita as it is, you're hearing directly from Krishna, and he is the highest authority. The very same system is accepted. The very same system is accepted universally as truth, but only the false arguer speaks against it. For example, modern spacecraft fly in the sky, and when the scientists say that they traveled to the other side of the moon, men believe these stories blindly because they have accepted the modern scientists as authorities. The authorities speak, and the people in general believe them. But in the case of Vedic truths, they have been taught not to believe. Even if they accept them, they give a different interpretation. Each and every man wants a direct perception of Vedic knowledge, but foolishly they deny it. This means that the misguided man the misguided man can believe one authority, the scientist, but will reject the authority of the Vedas. The result is that people have degenerated. Here is an authority speaking about Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead and the first Narayana. Even such an impersonalist as Acharya Sankara has said in the beginning of his commentation on the Bhagavad Gita that Narayana, the personality of Godhead, is beyond the material creation. The universe is one of the material creations, but Narayana is transcendental to such material paraphernalia. Bhismadeva is one of the 12 Mahajans who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Sri Krishna's being the original personality of Godhead is also corroborated by the impersonalist Sankara. All other acharyas have also confirmed this statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Sri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhismadeva says that he is the first Narayana. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in the Bhagavatam 10:14-14. Krishna is the first Narayana. In the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, there are unlimited numbers of Narayanas who are all the same personality of Godhead and are considered to be the plenary expansion of the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The first form of Lord Sri Krishna first expands himself as the form of Baladeva, and Baladeva expands in so many other forms such as Sankar's son, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. Then Vasudeva, Narayana, Purusha, Rama, and Nrsimha. All these expansions are one and the same Vishnu Tattva, and Sri Krishna is the original source of all the plenary expansions. He is therefore the direct personality of Godhead. He is the creator of the material world, and he is the predominating deity known as Narayana in all the Vaikuntha planets. Therefore, his movements amongst human beings are another sort of bewilderment. The Lord therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that foolish persons consider him to be one of the human beings without knowing the intricacies of his movements. The bewilderment regarding Sri Krishna is due to the action of his twofold internal and external energies upon the third one, called marginal energy. The living entities are expansions of his marginal energy, and they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. By internal energetic bewilderment, Sri Krishna expands himself into unlimited numbers of Narayanas and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world. And by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst men, animals, or demigods to reestablish his forgotten relation with the living entities in different species of life. Great authorities like Bhisma, however, escape his bewilderment by the mercy of the Lord. So here, a very profound explanation that Krishna is the Supreme Personality Godhead, and living entities are expansions of his marginal energy. But they are sometimes bewildered by the internal energy and sometimes by the external energy. By internal energetic bewilderment, Sri Krishna expands himself into unlimited numbers of Narayanas and exchanges or accepts transcendental loving service from the living entities in the transcendental world. And by his external energetic expansions, he incarnates himself in the material world amongst the men, animals, or demigods to reestablish his forgotten relation with the living entities in different species of life. Great authorities like Bhisma, however, escape his bewilderment by the mercy of the Lord. So we can see it's not an easy thing to understand Krishna because he has infinite number of expansions. Living entities, material world, all the avatars. So it's easy for people to fall into illusion about who Krishna is. But if we hear from genuine authorities, then we're never bewildered by the external or internal energy of the Lord. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhavi Ki Jai. So now, the next verse, Bhisma says, O king, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sage amongst demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about Krishna's glories through direct contact. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, pure devotees of the Lord are all bhavas, or persons who know the glories of the Lord in different transcendental loving services. As the Lord has innumerable expansions of his plenary form, there are innumerable pure devotees of the Lord who are engaged in the exchange of service of different humors. Ordinarily, there are 12 great devotees of the Lord, namely Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kumara, Kapila, Manu, Prahlada, Bhisma, Janaka, Sukadev Goswami, Bali Maharaj, and Yamaraj. Bhisma Deva. So those are the 12 Mahajans, or great experts in Krishna consciousness in the universe. Bhisma Deva, although one of them, has mentioned only 3, Yamaraj, three important names of the 12 who know the glories of the Lord. Sri Viswanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the great acharyas in the modern age, explains that Anubhava, or the glory of the Lord, is first appreciated by his devotee in ecstasy, manifesting the symptoms of perspiring, trembling, weeping, bodily eruptions, etc., which are further enhanced by steady understanding of the glories of the Lord. Such different understandings of bhavas are exchanged between Yasoda and the Lord, for example, binding the Lord by ropes, and in the chariot driving by the Lord in the exchange of love with Arjuna. These glories of the Lord are exhibited in his being subordinated before his devotees, and that is another feature of the glories of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami and the Kumaras, although situated in the transcendental position, became converted by another feature of bhava and turned into pure devotees of the Lord. Tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental bhava between the Lord and the devotees. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhava with me. Placing the devotee into material troubles necessitates delivering him from the illusory material relations. The material relations are based on reciprocation of material enjoyment, which depends mainly on material resources. Therefore, when material resources are withdrawn by the Lord, the devotee is 100% attracted toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Thus, the Lord snatches the fallen soul from the mire of material existence. Tribulations offered by the Lord to his devotee are different from the tribulations resulting from vicious action or karma. All these glories of the Lord are especially known to the great Mahajanas, like Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Kapila, Kumara, and Bhisma, as mentioned above, and one is able to grasp it by their grace. So these are all very important instructions that Bhisma Deva is giving to Yudhishthira. And it continues. So, we will also continue, but to show the relationship to Makara Sankranti, so we're reading in verse 20, but we'll fast forward to so on verse number let's see. Okay, I'm not seeing it. Let's see, where is it? Anyway, it's let me see where it is. Well, in the verse it says that the sun passed into the northern hemisphere as Bhisma was concluding his discussion of Raja Dharma and the Vishnu Sahasranama Sutram, and that heralded the Makara Sankranti. And at that point, Bhisma left his body. That's why the Makara Sankranti is so important, because all of the great sages in the universe came to see Bhisma leaving his body and witness all the profound instructions he gave to Maharaj Yudhisthira. And of course, Krishna himself was present, because that only proves that Bhisma was a pure devotee. In fact, he says, after giving all these instructions, he says, "Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Shri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajadama, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance." Then he says, and now he's remembering the different transcendental pastimes of the Lord. He says, "At the Rajasuya Yajna sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly, Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord, Shri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one." And then he says, Sutta Goswami said, "Thus Bhisma Dev merged himself in the Super Soul, the Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions, and thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Knowing that Bhisma Dev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute Truth, all present there became silent, like the birds at the end of the day." So you see, this is most auspicious event in the history of the world. And hearing the instructions that Bhisma Dev gave to Maharaj Yudhisthira, and then hearing Bhisma Dev's own understanding of who Krishna is. So here it is, in Canto 1, Chapter 9, Verse 29, it says, "While Bhisma Dev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will." And in the purport, Prabhupada says, "The perfect yogis or mystics can leave the material body at their own sweet will at a suitable time and go to a suitable planet desired by them." In the Bhagavad Gita 8:24, it is said that self-realized souls who have exactly identified themselves with the interest of the Supreme Lord can generally leave the material body during the time of the fire god's effulgence and when the sun is in the northern horizon, and thus achieve the transcendental sky. In the Vedas, these times are considered auspicious for quitting the body, and they are taken advantage of by the expert mystics who have perfected the system. Perfection of yoga means attainment of such supramental states as to be able to leave the material body as desired. Yogis can reach any planet within no time without a material vehicle. The yogis can reach the highest planetary system within a very short time, and this is impossible for the materialists. Even attempting to reach the highest planet will take millions of years at a speed of millions of miles per hour. This is a different science, and Bhisma Dev knew well how to utilize it. He was just waiting for the suitable moment to quit his material body, and the golden opportunity arrived when he was instructing his noble grandsons, the Pandavas. He thus prepared himself to quit his body before the exalted Lord Shri Krishna, the pious Pandavas, and the great sages headed by Bhagavan Vyasa and all great souls. So he waited for this moment of Makara Sankranti. And the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. That's what's happening today. the sun passes from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, and this period is desired by mystics who die at their will. Okay, so we'll stop right there. And then, right as soon as that happened, then he concluded his discussion of Raja Dharma and the Vishnu Sahasram Sotram, and then he spoke very confidential things about his understanding of Krishna, about the relationship of Krishna with the Pandavas, and then he revealed some transcendental things about his relationship with Krishna, and then he left his body. So this is an exemplary way of leaving the body, and it was so exemplary that Krishna himself was present to witness it and to appear in front of Bhismadeva, because that proves that Bhismadeva was his pure devotee. So therefore it says, Bhismadeva, as a pure devotee of the Lord, this is text 44, as a pure devotee of the Lord, entered the spiritual realm in one of the Vaikuntha planets where the Lord, in his eternal form of Parthasarati, predominates over the unconditioned living beings who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The love and affection which bind the Lord and the devotee are exhibited in the case of Bhismadeva. Bhismadeva never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as the Parthasarati, and the Lord was present personally besides Bhismadeva while he was passing to the transcendental world. That is the highest perfection of life. Okay, so we'll stop right there. You can read Canto 1, Chapter 9. I didn't read all the verses. We didn't have enough time. But this is a very profound pastime of the Lord. And when you begin to enter into it, and you see the intimacy between Vishnudev and Krishna, then you understand that we have to take this Krishna consciousness very, very seriously in order to be able to join Lord Krishna in the eternal spiritual world of Vaikuntha, or even better, in Goloka Vrindavan. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.